Welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Rafi Salatic. Great to have your company. We want to dedicate our first episode of the year to children affected by the war in Gaza. Since October the 7th, thousands of children have been killed by Israeli airstrikes or as a result of lack of medication and care. Most of those born and raised there are traumatized and scared. The Balkans has grappled with its own wars in the 90s, and during the siege of Sarajevo, more than 1,500 children were killed. The survivors who spent parts of their childhood during the war say they still suffer the effects decades later and believe they will never fully recover. In a moment, we'll speak to psychotherapists who worked with affected Gazan children. But first, here is Adama Munu's report on staggering numbers from Gaza, which the UN has called a graveyard for children.
It might be a new year, but Israel's bombardment of Gaza hasn't stopped. And neither has the suffering of its children who have been displaced in camps in the south, where about 85% of Gaza's 2.3 million people have fled their homes. Nearly 9,000 Palestinian children have been killed, according to Gaza's government, with thousands more missing under the rubble of buildings destroyed in Israeli airstrikes. The charity Save the Children says that's one child killed every 10 minutes. The staggering death toll has led the UN to describe Gaza as a graveyard for children, with a high risk of famine and outbreak of diseases like cholera. For the children who have grown up under past military assaults on the occupied Strip, there is only one thing they hope for in the new year, and that's a sense of normalcy and peace.
بقينا قاعدين في دار مسيدين عنا أكل وعنا شرب وعنا غاز بنتغلب في توليع النار بنطبخ الأكل على النار ويعني بقينا عايشين حياة حلوة يعني.
But it's not just children who are bearing the brunt of the attacks. Expectant mothers are also facing massive difficulties as maternal, newborn and child health services are severely disrupted or non-existent in the enclave. But there is a kernel of hope and consolation for some Palestinian mothers who have managed to give birth safely, like Iman al-Masri, who has quadruplets, after fleeing with her family from the north. While the road ahead may still be challenging, it's a poignant reminder that even in the darkest times, love and new beginnings still have the power to flourish. Adama Munu, Across the Balkans.
I'm joined now by Snežana Anđelić. As I've mentioned, she's a child psychotherapist who worked with Palestinian children in Gaza and the occupied West Bank between 2015 and 2019. Snežana, great to have you with us on Across the Balkans. Now, we've heard there almost 9,000 children killed so far. Difficult to understand, difficult to report. Are among them anyone who used to work with while your time in Gaza?
It's very hard to get information at this moment from Gaza. I worked with the children's center that was supporting kids with different activities to help them kind of create as normal life as possible. What I heard last is from the child that was really extremely interested in workshops in robotica, and he was really small genius who created amazing stuff from nothing. I've never seen something like that before. What I got information is that his house is bombed. We still don't know if he survived. I mean, it's so hard to think when you see the child with a future, every child should have a future. For me, it's personally so hard to think that this little boy, this small genius, who just needed a couple of batteries, all the wires and everything, and he would create amazing stuff. It's very painful to think that life maybe it's not there anymore, that little boy, this small genius that could have such a great future.
I can
Maybe
imagine
not
how
all
it is for you, especially for people, I think, I mean, it's difficult for all of us to hear stories coming out of Gaza, but for you, as you personally met them, talked to them, it must be even more difficult. What it's like being a child in Gaza, what is that they all had in common, the ones that you get a chance to work with?
You know, children are all, I worked all over the world, and children are everywhere the same. They just want to have a future. They have dreams. They have fantasies. They are creative. They just want to have, basic life needs covered. And what they need the most is security and safety. So what I see in the children, they just need to feel safe so that they can express their creativity, that they can just enjoy their life. And
Right, and these children, they don't have security since the day, most of them, since the day they were born. They were raised not feeling safe and secure. All of us who are parents, we know how significant that is for children. So what are the main issues they face psychologically?
But I could see that these children developed from very early age, what I didn't see in many other countries. They develop sensitivity to survival skills. They have very strong psychological defense mechanisms. So, and they are coping with insecurity every single day. So what I could see is that they have senses, like they react on sounds. They can recognize the sound, especially in West Bank. They could recognize the sounds of military car, of the, when the first shooting comes very early, they would react and run. So it means that those children were exposed to trauma of war in very early age, so that their mind had to develop certain things that none of the other children living in normal society needed to develop. So we have a children with cumulative trauma, and their mind and their body fully reacting on what is going on around them. I was amazed, to be honest, to see, for example, a child telling me, "Oh, don't sit there in Lajee Center in Bethlehem. Don't sit there because the soldiers will shoot you with the rubber bullets." The child, 6, 7, 8 years old, they knew exactly where you should sit and where you should not sit. So they would run when they hear the sound of the gate opening, because they know that the soldiers are coming. So it means that we are talking about highly traumatized children who already developed all kinds of senses in trying to survive what they are experiencing every single day. You know, in Gaza, it's unpredictable. You never know when attack will happen. So every day you wake up with this idea, what will happen today? Unpredictability, it's terrible for children's development. As we know, the children need routine, safety, security, to be free, and for their mind to be free to develop healthy. When we talk about children from Gaza, we are talking about children who are mobilized all the time. Their mind, body, soul, everything is mobilized. And in one hand, they're playing and doing things, everything as a normal child. But in other hand, one part of the mind, of the brain, is all the time active, waiting for danger to happen. So it's really sad to see the children that has to develop
and
that
we
kind
can
of
just
thing.
imagine the impact that this will have on their lives. You know, we come from the region that has seen its own wars. We know what it means to survive the bombardment, and we know that that changes you forever. What can we all do to help them?
You know, when we were there, we were trying to create that kind of centers to help them have some normality, have something normal. But for the future, it's responsibility for each of us to finally give these people peace, to give them a place to live, to give them a land to work and live on, to give them state, to give them what belongs to every human on earth. So I think those children deserve life like every other child on earth. And when we look at UN conventions on children's rights, why are the Palestinian children not there? Why don't we give them the right of that belongs to every child?
Right.
Who did we write those children rights for if we don't give them to Palestinian children?
Thank you for being our guest. While the conflict in Gaza rages on, some countries stepped in for the civilians who suffered the most. The fighting has also prompted international efforts to work on a peace plan. As most of the European countries support a two-state solution jointly with the EU, Slovenia has unveiled its own peace plan to take further steps in recognizing Palestine. Although the country's both leftist and conservative parties agree on the two-state solution, its foreign minister has been criticized for singling out Slovenia and acting individually out of the EU. Veljko Skenderija has more from Ljubljana.
I stand up with Palestinian people. Hello from Ljubljana. Keep your head up. For freedom, baby, for freedom.
As the conflict in Gaza between Israel and Hamas continues, the people of Slovenia are making their support for the people of Palestine very clear. This is in contrast to most Western countries which speak cautiously about conflict resolution models. Slovenia has launched a small diplomatic offensive in an effort to end fighting and loss of lives.
I strongly support the idea of a peace conference with concrete peace plan and further steps that lead to a two-state solution and the recognition of Palestinian state. I think this moment is now.
Slovenian Prime Minister Robert Golob says his country is prepared to recognize Palestine independently of the EU, provided that the conflict ends and the Israeli-Palestinian peace process is renewed. President Nataša Pirc-Musar has condemned the indiscriminate killing of civilians.
To, kar vidimo v Gazi, je tudi napad na človekovo dostojanstvo. Scenarij, ki se napoveduje in deloma tudi že uresničuje, me skrbi. Število žrtev, ki so davek brezumju nasilja, raste. Med temi žrtvami so tudi otroci. In to je nesprejemljivo.
It is important to emphasize that the Palestinian issue has been present in the Slovenian public space for years, just as the recognition of a Palestinian state was seriously considered before, but part of the political and economic establishment did not want to spoil relations with Israel. However, the current situation has completely turned public opinion towards pro-Palestinian sentiment.
Kad u stvari vidiš što se događa, da je sad već 20.000 mrtvih u 2 mjeseci, da možda ovo što radi Izrael baš i nije neka samoobrana, jer u stvari izraelske vlasti, naročito neki ekstremno desni ministri tamo otvoreno govore o preseljenju i što znači na Balkanu, to znamo što znači etničko čišćenje.
Some political analysts are skeptical of the unilateral recognition of Palestine without EU support.
Definitely the country like Slovenia, a small country like Slovenia, cannot afford to play some solo statement like this one. So it's definitely premature, inadequate, and as I said, we should wait that the conflict in Gaza would end, then the EU, the major superpower, should pressure both sides to come to a kind of a two-state solution, which should be acceptable for both sides.
And the left-centrist government is also being criticized by its opponents for its stance. Matej Tonin, leader of the New Slovenia party, agrees that an end to the conflict and a peace agreement are prerequisites for any further action, but he insists the EU must be involved.
Conservatives will definitely advocate that the best way that it will be in the interest of Slovenia to do it jointly together with the EU or with a group of other Western countries. That will be probably the clear line of division in Slovenia, how we will approach after those two requirements will be fulfilled.
What both the Slovenian political left and right agree on is that it is necessary to find a solution for a stable and long-lasting peace, just as the ultimate goal must be a two-state solution. Veljko Skenderija, TRT World, Ljubljana, Slovenia.